Okay, welcome back to Android View Tutorials with Ryan. For this video we're going to be looking at a couple different variations for the navigation drawer. If you remember in the previous video, basically what we did was we created the most simple implementation of a navigation drawer, and it kind of left something wanting. You could only open it by placing a finger or thumb at the very edge of the screen, and I personally found it kind of clunky, so we're going to try and improve that with our first variation here, and also add some visual style to the app. So in this variation, basically how it's going to work is we're going to have our navigation drawer actually open and close below the toolbar, and we're going to animate the toolbar's icon on the top left there, and sort of to help the user figure out how to open and close the navigation drawer, and also provide an easier means for doing that. So we'll just jump into the demo here. So I'll try clicking on the icon. There we are. Now I can still swipe to close it, but as you see, we'll be able to tap the icon again to close the navigation drawer as well, just like that. And one more time, just for the hell of it. And yeah, that's basically all that's going to be going on. So before I get into the code, I just want to mention that things will be getting more complicated, but not in the sense of it being sort of technically difficult. There is a lot of boilerplate code involved in creating this navigation drawer. And what I mean by boilerplate code is there's going to be a lot of copy and pasting methods that basically Google has set up to sort of expedite the process. But I'd strongly suggest that for the methods and pieces of code that you're not really familiar with and don't make a whole lot of sense, just focus on what they do rather than understanding everything about them, because honestly there's some stuff in here that as we'll see later on is a little bit obscure, so I'll try and talk you through it, but try not to get overwhelmed. This is just one of the aspects of programming where you need to do a lot of copy and paste just to get the stuff running, and worry about the finer details later. So let's jump into the code. Okay, welcome back. So before we begin with the coding, I'll just have you jump into styles.xml and make one slight change here. All we're going to do is change the parent attribute to, say, theme.appcompat.noActionBar, and that's all we need to do there. We're going to be supplying our own action bar, so that's why we're doing that. So go ahead and head over to Res Layout, create a new XML resource called Toolbar.xml, or just type toolbar, same difference pretty much. And all we're going to do is, I'll just copy and paste this in here. So we're just going to create a new v7 toolbar. The layout width is of course match parent, layout height, wrap content, and background color primary, and that's all we need to do there. Nothing special going on, so I didn't really want to bother going into too much detail. And then what we'll do is head into activity-main.xml. So basically what we'd like to achieve is I'd like to have the navigation drawer open below the toolbar. So I want the toolbar situated above, and then I'd also like the toolbar to animate itself with the sort of open and close icon. So we'll kind of get that prepared here, or at least part of that. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to make the root layout of this layout here relative layout. We'll just go ahead and close that tag there. And the reason why I'm using a relative layout, you could actually use a linear layout for this and set it to orientation vertical, but it's just going to be easier for me to use the relative layout. I find that it's generally more a more versatile option than the linear layout, but you know, there's appropriate situations for everything. Let's go ahead and include our toolbar that we just created. The include tag basically allows you to import another layout from a different file. It's super handy, and I suggest you use it to kind of clean up your XMLs if you're not already in the habit of doing so. We'll just type layout at layout toolbar, perfect, and we'll also give this thing an ID. ID will be app bar. That's a pretty generic name for it. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do, I'm just going to hit Control-Alt-L to kind of format this thing a bit. We can get rid of these extra namespaces here, and one last thing I need to do is we'll just type Android layout below, add ID, app bar. Or sorry, I'm sorry, that is not supposed to be appbar.xml. That's just supposed to be appbar. Looks like I could use some more coffee. Okay, so that should set up everything there, and we're basically done. In the XML stuff anyways. Hop on over to main-activity.java. Of course, this is code that we're continuing on from the previous tutorial, so if you're wondering what all this stuff is, you need to go and watch that tutorial, because it won't really make sense otherwise. So the first thing we'll do is we need to add a couple different... Let me just find where I am here. We need to add a couple of different variables here. So the first thing will be private toolbar, v7 of course, toolbar. And then we'll also create private action bar drawer toggle. God, that's a long name. Called toggle. We're going to create a new method here and basically migrate all of this navigation drawer stuff to the new method. So what I'll do, I'll copy and paste part of it in just to kind of speed things up, but we will go through all of the important code here, so don't worry about that. So I'll just close this off here. So all that's going on for now, we're going to add to this method in a moment, but we're passing in our list of icons and labels, which we created up here. And we're basically going to try and set up everything to do with the navigation drawer, the list, and the adapter, and all that stuff. Get it set up in one method. Basically, the reason why I'm doing that is I didn't really want to clutter up onCreate with a huge number of different commands. I find that's one of my biggest mistakes when I started programming, is trying to do everything in onCreate and not kind of delegate or create helper functions. So I highly suggest you get in the habit of doing that if your onCreates end up being like 100 lines long. Sometimes maybe they need to be, but certainly not in this case. So now that I've just imported that there, we can go ahead and delete this here. And let's just head up to the top of onCreate and we'll set up our toolbar. So we'll just say toolbar equals toolbar. We'll say find view by ID r.id.appbar. Perfect. And let's see here. So we need to set the support action bar. Basically, what we're doing here is since we're supplying our own toolbar and we don't want to use the sort of typical action bar, then we need to call this method here, which allows us to specify that this is now the toolbar, or the action bar, essentially. What else here? We need to call a couple of methods. So we'll say, sorry, I'm just going to close my window. Loud noises. Okay, so we need to call get support action bar dot, and then we need to use this funny ass method here, set display home up as enabled, true. And then we'll also call get support action bar dot what's the other one? Set home button enabled, true. So basically what these methods will do is they will create our icon in the top left quarter of the screen, and that's why we didn't need to specify any of that stuff in Toolbar XML or even create a menu resource for it. It all gets handled with these by utilizing these methods here. I think that's everything we need to do there. Yep. So we'll just head down to our setup nav drawer menu. Let's see. So we need to set up our toggle. So we'll just say toggle equals new action bar. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste this in because that's quicker. Okay. So, all that I've done here is I've just copy and pasted in an implementation of the action bar jar toggle class. There's a couple different constructors for it. For this one, we are passing in a toolbar. There's another constructor where you pass in an icon of some kind, but we're not really going to worry about that. Also, we need to create string open and close, so hop on over to strings.xml. And I'm just going to type string name equals open. We don't actually see these strings, but I'm just going to supply them anyway, otherwise the thing will scream at us. Close, and this one will be called close. And that should sort that issue out. And there's only one other thing we need to do in this method. We need to call the method navdrawer.addDrawerListener. And then we pass in the toggle. So the toggle itself acts as a listener. So this method right here is super important. It's basically what allows us, so if you didn't include this method, let me back up a bit, then what would happen is your navigation drawer would still function, but it wouldn't really animate. So by calling navdrawer.addDrawerListener, we're basically setting up those animations. You wouldn't really know that just by looking at the method name there, so it's kind of a little bit obscure, but I just wanted to point that out. Sets up the animations properly. Now, we're just about done. There's only a couple methods that we need to override just to handle certain circumstances, so I'm just going to select them and paste them in. Okay. And I don't think I've mentioned, I should have mentioned this earlier, but all of this code is available on the blog post just down in the description box, so I would strongly suggest you just copy and paste this stuff. There's really no need to type it out by hand. So I've got a couple things on post create. Basically, these methods are fairly self-explanatory. By just calling toggle sync state and just letting the toggle know when configuration changes have happened and stuff like that, it's going to basically make it so that the if we change the orientation, the nav drawer stays open, and just a bunch of stuff like that. The only other thing we have is yeah, I don't even really need to go into the on options item selected thing anyway. So that's basically it. If you compile the app, then it should run and you should have a working demo of what I showed you earlier on. I'm going to be doing a couple more videos in this series for the navigation drawer, but this is basically this is sort of the implementation that I would usually use. I find that the navigation drawer that opens under the toolbar and animates the toolbar is sort of the... if you have just a very basic and sleek sort of look to your app and your navigation bar is just strictly for navigating between activities, I think this is really the best implementation to use. Anyways, in the next videos we'll look at some other implementations, so thanks for watching. Well, it wouldn't be wise ass tutorials without me looking like an ass, so naturally there's one correction to make. Just at the bottom of the onCreate method, type setup navigation drawer. Yes, we actually need to call that method there. And we'll pass in labels and icons. Okay, now the app should work. Peace.